Hello and welcome to our podcast, Everyday People, Extraordinary Performance. My name is Natalie Byrne.
And I am Abigail Wilson, and today we are joined by Mark Jenkinson, an accomplished professional with over 2 decades of experience in the oil and gas industry. From starting as apprentice at BP to becoming an offshore installation manager and later transitioning to a leadership role, Mark's career journey has brought him a lot of insight and leadership. Alongside his work, he has passion for cultivating high-performing teams, both in the workplace and on the rugby pitch, where he coaches and applies lessons from sports to leadership and culture development. A lifelong learner and advocate of creating environments where people can thrive, Mark brings a wealth of insights on leadership, culture, and the power of community. Welcome, Mark. So we have given a very kind of brief intro there, but would you mind essentially running through your CV? As we said, you started as an apprentice, and so what got you into that and then led you to where you are now?
So at school, I was kind of academic, but I followed the crowd, which was apply for university. But my heart wasn't in it at all. Visited a few places, and really, I wanted something else. And I applied for an apprenticeship with BP. That was the main reason, because it offered me an opportunity to continue with education, but get into the workplace and use some of the more practical aspects of being in a work environment. BP had a huge reputation. It had a massive reputation in the area that I live in for being one of the best apprenticeship programs. They also promoted that it wasn't just a 4-year course. This was an opportunity to start a career with BP and go beyond. So that was why I joined an apprenticeship scheme, and that's why I joined BP. It helped that it was a few miles from where I'd grown up. I got into an operational role through their recruitment and spent the first 3, almost 4 years getting a base understanding of engineering, academic study up to HNC, Higher National Certificate in Chemical Engineering. And alongside that, I was working in an operational role. The operational role started as me essentially shadowing up to being part of a team. And then I came out of my apprenticeship and I took on a shift role, which was a continental shift pattern at the time. But I got an opportunity at 21 to join a team that were commissioning 2 chemical plants. So that really threw me in at the deep end. So I was putting into practice what I'd learned in the academic world, in a live test environment, like a huge laboratory test kit. And we ran into so many problems to being submerged in that environment with chemists and chemical engineers, process engineers, mechanical, all trying to solve commissioning problems was an unbelievable learning curve. I think it set me up for life, really, in that base environment. Then got an opportunity to move on from the petrochemical world into oil and gas, again with BP at the time. And again, got an opportunity to commission some onshore compression systems, which was a different aspect of operational technology to what I'd originally learned in petrochemical. Huge experience. And then I moved on to work for Centrica Offshore.
Brilliant. So that's all quite technical. So I guess, as we've mentioned as well, you're a very keen sports person. So how have those two linked in terms of what you've learned through the sports side of it, and then how have you taken that into your professional role?
I played team sports. Can't say I was particularly good at them, but I love the camaraderie and that joy. It's almost like a joint purpose, isn't it? You've got to try and win a game, win multiple games, try and get as successful a team as possible, strive to get into playoffs or trophies, into cup finals. So that sporting aspect of working as a team, meeting so many different people from different backgrounds. Once you're in that environment, you can see why what makes up a team, what makes up a successful team isn't having the cloned same person. It just wouldn't work. You need to look for that diversity. And so that's what I would say I would link from being part of football and more so rugby into my professional life. That's the biggest learning for me, really. Is that?
And how would you say you apply that in the work environment, that diversity? Do you apply it, or do you see organizations applying it quite regularly, that diversity of thought? Or do you feel like there's still work to be done in some of organizations to really harness that?
Yeah, I think there's some work to be done. It's a tightrope of falling one way or the other, and we talk about unconscious bias, but cultural diversity, all types of just looking for different people from different cultures and experiences will only enhance a team, in my opinion. Yeah, you've got to, but there's difficulties in that, and the pool that the area that you live in, the area that your team reside in, can cause challenges in that recruitment. Different areas of the country offer opportunities and a pool of people that would be different to, say, where I live at the moment. So there are challenges in it, and getting over that and working through that has to be an important aspect of any organisations.
Do you recruit quite a bit, or how do you apply that then for your recruitment process in terms of looking at the diversity, but also the cultural influences, and how is that person a good fit for your team or not? How do you consider that quite a bit, or how can you consider it really?
One of my mentors had said to me once is leaders tend to recruit in their own image, and it's resonated with me quite a lot. Am I always going to see a white male that plays sport from an engineering background? And that might be correct for certain elements of a team, the team that I'm trying to build. But then you end up with like-minded people, and the diversity pool, and how your thoughts, how you approach problems and tackle problems becomes very one-dimensional.
Definitely a challenge, and definitely something that there's still work to be done on, but it's encouraging that there are leaders out there that are thinking that way and are looking to build their teams. So you definitely seem to like a challenge in terms of, as I said, your sporting history. Obviously now you do high rocks, you like to challenge yourself personally and in a sporting environment as well. So do you feel that, what kind of role does resilience play when you're having a challenging time, whether that rugby, high rock, in the workplace? What place do you think resilience has in that?
Yeah, it's fundamental for any team to achieve that, whether professionally or in sport or individual sport. I think also possibly harder in an individual sport environment, when you've got to challenge yourself and look for how you can overcome problems. So putting yourself outside of your comfort zone is an element to test your own resilience. There's not one top sports person that has ever... They don't achieve what they've achieved by sitting within their comfort zone. They don't achieve what they achieve without coming to some kind of adversity they've got to overcome. And at that point, it's whether you look into that challenge or walk away from it. So resilience is a huge factor in how we can achieve extraordinary things as an individual or as a team.
And do you find parallels with that in terms of what you've experienced sporting, but also in the workplace, potentially in leadership?
Yeah. So in leadership roles, when you look at major projects, they never go well. Look at the pandemic. I'm sure it's been alluded to so many times. Delivering a major project through a pandemic, which is something that I did in a previous role, or led a team through that, procuring materials, trying to keep individuals at work, but you can't prepare for that in terms of, you can't predict it, but you can prepare for that if you've got the correct team and the right mindset. And if you look at a problem like that and think, well, what can we do? If everything went according to plan, how would it look? And then you work back from that. So I think that's how you build some resilience in your team. It's every problem, you think, good, I've got a new challenge.
Yeah.
If you look at every problem and think, oh, that's me again, I don't get any luck, then you don't succeed. There's got to be an element of switching it around. We talk, I think there's this talk about the chimp paradox, and that can overtake your emotions, and sometimes you might just have to confide in a colleague and let all those emotions out, but then your game face comes back on when you go back into your leadership role and you're talking to your team about how we're going to overcome this. I think that's how I've personally helped myself with resilience.
Mhm.
I know you're doing a very interesting sport. I've never come across before because I think that's quite a pressure sport as well. Because that to me is fascinating in terms of how can you learn from that environment to bring that into sort of your work and your leadership role. But what about high rocks? Can you tell us a bit more about that one?
Yeah, High Rocks is like a functional fitness sporting event. It's taken the world, but it's exploded recently in Europe and then more latterly in America. It's a running race essentially, but for every 1 kilometer you run, you get to a workout station, and there are 8 of those. So you run 8 times. At the end of each run, there's a challenging exercise to do, and that doesn't change from race to race. What that gives you the opportunity to do is pit yourself against yourself. So we all get wrapped up in personal goals. I've done a little bit of running. You start tracking those runs on Strava, and then you compare yourself to your neighbour or your friend, and why are they running? You've got to take a step back from that and just think, am I beating my last run? Am I running further, faster? Am I running more efficiently? And that's been the draw to me into High Rocks is forget what everybody else is doing. There's statistics out there. You can look at every single race, every individual that's taken part, and compare yourself to them. And it's good to have a challenge, but what excites me about it is taking the data from a race I've done myself and then trying to beat it again. What am I going to do to improve? Write that down. Look at how you can structure your training, diet, sleep, and go again. So that's the draw to High Rocks to me. And you can compete in small teams. You create a community. I think that's important for anything. Creating a community of like-minded people that can help you. If you've got 4 friends that do High Rocks, you're probably going to be the 5th person that does it. I think that's kind of the cliche, isn't it? And then you create that camaraderie and try and push yourself on with it. So that's kind of why I like High Rocks. What you do, the race is an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how good you are. But there's 10 to 20 hours a week of training that goes behind that nobody sees. And I think when we often look at successful leaders, successful teams in sport and in organizations, you see the outputs. What would you see in an organization? Profit, huge safety performance, share price rockets. You don't see what's happened in the background. You don't realize that Dyson had about, 5,000 prototypes that all failed. And then that one that hits the market, and we all talk about that one, but we don't see what went on in the background. I think that's why I think I take a lot from sport. We don't see what happens at 6 a.m. when you're out for a run. You don't see a rugby team that have won a title. You don't see what happened in pre-season. All those hours of sweat and toil and all the sacrifices that they've made. They've maybe sacrificed seeing their family. They've sacrificed a social event. You don't see any of that, and people aren't really interested. They just want the trophy. And the teams that are the most successful, or the individuals that are the most successful, I think, are the ones that really enjoy the journey. And the end point is the end point. That trophy is the end point, but that wasn't ultimately the goal. I think it's that journey people enjoy.
And it's also, especially with the high rocks, as you were saying, it's more of a individual almost goal, but you can absolutely create teams and have that almost, you need that support in order to achieve some
Yeah.
great goals. So, and that's the same at work. You've got your own individual goals, your own purpose, but you need to have it with a team to really achieve something extraordinary almost. In a team setting, you can achieve quite a lot, probably even more if you have that really good team behind you. And yeah, from your own perspective, what do you think is it from sport that gets so much referenced to then take that into leadership? Is that the individual goal team element, or are there any other elements that you think this is what we take from sport and this is why it's really important for a workplace as well to take that into account?
Yeah. It's about a vision. You've got to have a shared vision. And once you center a team around a shared vision, that's when you can achieve quite extraordinary things. And a team that are showing up to deliver that vision will push, strive any way they can to help you achieve. And then in leadership, it's how you bring the best out of that team. I think And that's when the diversity comes back in, diversity of thought, the ability to have some open and honest conversations, challenge. I think we talk a lot more recently about psychological safety.
Mm.
So very, very important if you're going to succeed. Growth mindset, previously alluded to the what if you're always thinking about how we can strive to be even better, what do we need to take away to achieve that goal, and then go and work on that as a team. That's when you can achieve quite a lot of things. And the sporting environment comes into the professional environment, the organisational environment, that shared vision. So why are we on this pitch in the pouring rain, training again? Why am I sat turning down a night out with my friends because I've got training tomorrow or a game tomorrow? That's when because you've got a shared vision and you don't want to let people down.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Also, quite often it's hard to motivate people. Like, there's conditions like this. Like you said, in that rainy day, you have to go on and be on the pitch. But same as a workplace, you organizations or teams have challenges. Like, how do you keep people motivated? And quite often we hear that now, that it's not just about money. It's how do you truly motivate a team? So have you found any kind of ways or strategies of truly motivating a team on the pitch or professionally as well? What is your go-to to motivate your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Money isn't the way. Don't get me wrong. It's the basis of why we're probably at work. But over and above that, you're looking for that small rewards. You need to understand the individual to then understand what actually motivates them. So how I would motivate an introverted person would be very, very different to an extrovert. I've really made some huge mistakes in this. A cinema full of people in an offshore environment, and you call somebody out to come to the front, and you're giving them an award for what they've achieved over the last few weeks or months in a project. And I've had that individual come to my office and say, please never, ever do that again. They found it extremely embarrassing in front of their colleagues. So I've made huge mistakes about calling poor performance out in a crowd, and then actually having to take a step back and apologise in front of that same crowd. So yeah, it's a real minefield about how you develop and motivate teams, and you've got to understand the individual. Some small awards, having fun, I think that's got to come into it. Elements of the work environment as well as sport. If you constantly, if you don't celebrate champagne moments or look for small milestones, I think champagne moments are quite good to celebrate. They can be weekly. So in a previous role, I used to start the week with my team, and I called the meeting "How We'll Win the Week." So even in the title of the meeting, I wanted to talk about what we're going to win. What will we achieve? And what will winning the week look like when we're reflecting on the week on Friday? And then you try and make that happen. And then when you get to Friday, what did you achieve that won that week? And then people start to center around, if you win a week, you win a month. And if you win a month, you win the quarter. And that's how I tried to bring my sporting passion into my work environment. So you can't win a rugby game by being obsessive about the points on the board. It's about how you break it down, how that individual competes with his opposing or their opposing person on the pitch. How are the forwards going to compete with the forwards in another rugby team? How are the backs going to compete? How's the team going to come together? How's the interchange going to work? Who's going to make the call on substitutes? When you start to concentrate on how that works, the cliche is the scoreboard just ticks over then in the background.
Mhm.
And then you get a quarter of the way into the game at half time. Is everything going to plan? And then you wait from there. And that's what I was trying to say about, I had a penny drop moment a few years ago where I thought, let's talk about how we win this week and almost not obsess about our long-term yearly targets, yearly objectives. Because if we're doing something each week that links to those objectives and moves them forward, suddenly by the end of the month, by the end of the quarter, we'll have achieved something from those, and then let's celebrate it. So yeah, that's kind of the stuff that I've taken from sport and put into my professional
Mm.
life.
I think that sums it up perfectly in terms of, as you're saying, you kind of look after the kind of core elements of what we call the high performing team element. And ultimately, if you look after that, the score, the performance, whatever it is you're working towards, that looks after itself, because you're working on those and creating a high performing team ultimately, whether that's on a pitch or whether that's in the workplace. So I think you've absolutely summarized that perfectly. So I guess we've kind of spoken about some of your challenges and that you like a challenge. I guess outside of work, what are some personal challenges or goals that have helped you grow as a person? Is there maybe one moment you look back on and think, oh, that was pivotal?
Personal goals. I think I've done 2 part-time degrees with children. I've got four children. I studied for a master's. It was difficult to juggle home life and then academic, what I was trying to achieve at university. So that would be a personal goal.
Mm.
Within 1 week, I challenged myself to run a marathon and do 2 back-to-back high rocks within 6 days. I did that. I kind of accidentally did that and then embraced it. So I thought, well, let's go for it. I did it to raise some money for a charity that's quite close to my heart. And that is because I think that's where I come back to what was my vision, what was getting me out to do 3 and 4 hour runs over a weekend, what was getting me in the gym to continue my strength training to still be able to complete high rocks. I think that was my own motivator and vision. So, and then that created the consistency. So that's probably what I've done personally, that's shaped me quite a lot. And I never thought that I'd ever run a marathon, ever. And then when you break it down, I followed a sort of a 20-week training program. After about 10 weeks, when I started to get into longer and longer runs, just thought, I can't ever think about running 26 miles. I think I ran 10 miles one Saturday or Sunday. I came home. I thought, how could I do another 16 on this?
Yeah.
But you got to just follow the process and trust the training. I had a coach. So I think that helps in sport and professionally. Who are you going to lean on when you've got a little bit of self-doubt coming in?
Sure.
When you're talking to a coach or a mentor in any walk of life, it can be personally the friend that you always confide in, work, or like I say, I had a performance coach in terms of how I was going to get through this marathon, high rocks. I opened up to him. He said, well, it's perfectly normal. Like, you're not ready for a marathon. No one's asking you to run a marathon this week. But trust me, in 10 weeks from now, you'll get through it. And he was right. Just got to trust that process, and then got over the finish line. And I actually realized that I enjoyed the training more than the marathon itself. You find out a lot about yourself in the last 3 miles of a marathon, I will tell you that. But and I don't know how people do ultra marathons, and I don't know how people do Ironmans. Maybe that I'll have to try one day. That was the biggest achievement personally.
I think it's interesting how, as well, with the coaching, you were saying how that really got you through. But I think a lot of people forget actually that there's coaching at work can be so powerful as well. And there's a lot of organizations who do it, a lot of organizations who don't do it, but coaching in the workplace actually has to really develop your leadership role or your soft skills can have such a great impact. Have you got a lot of experience with coaching at the workplace? Have you come across it a lot, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think you've got to look for diversity in coaches, and I'm going to expand on that a little bit. Coaching and mentors, or however you want to frame it, is very, very important. My dog's just coming for a drink, so I'll start
Saying hi.
again. Can you hear that?
All right.
There's a French bulldog. He's the noisiest drinker.
Oh,
He's gone again now. Yeah, so I'll go back to that one. So coaching and mentoring in the work in the work environment and within organisations is incredibly important. It's been fundamental to my own career. Looking for a coach to almost, you can be vulnerable with a coach, I think, in what you would call a safe environment. I'll come back to vulnerability, but you can let your guard down and really work with a coach. I think that's what I've really enjoyed working with some of the coaches in the past. And then you need to look for mentors. And when I said diversity, one of my best mentoring experiences was a reverse mentor. So working with an individual that was in a more junior position in a different area of the business to which I worked in was incredibly fulfilling. The reverse mentoring was incredibly fulfilling. That was meant to be a short 3-month period. We still work together now, 2 years later. We've both changed roles. She's actually been promoted, but she still reverse mentors me. I've learned incredible amount about, I used to bounce ideas off projects that might have been going slightly wrong, organisational change. How should I communicate with my team from her point of view? You know, if her leader was coming to her with the problems that I was dealing with, how best would she receive that information is kind of that was fantastic. So I've learned a lot from mentoring and coaching. I had some really difficult situations in a work environment and had the opportunity to call a coach and test conversations. Like I say, that's a safe environment and vulnerability. I think going back to vulnerability as a leader, you can really centralize a team around you if you show where your weaknesses are and show where your vulnerabilities are. I think when I was in my early career, when I'd first been promoted into a supervisory role, I actually thought, never show that you was wrong. Yeah. Never see counsel from teams that lead them. I thought leadership was, let's go, follow me, don't question it, we're just going for it. And yeah, that breaks down. I've had feedback from individuals that have worked with me more recently to say, at times that was fantastic, and at other times we just used to walk out of the room and we'd roll our eyes. So yeah, you've got to reflect and understand that you make mistakes, and if you can admit that to your team, I think you can get some real momentum.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's where the power of the trust then as well comes. Your team actually trusting you that, yes, you are human. Yes, you are vulnerable. Yes, you might make mistakes, but if we do it together, we can really achieve something great. So I think that's really important in a leader, and hats off that you recognize it as well, because some leaders don't realize that you actually show that vulnerability.
Yeah. So I'll give another anecdote. I'll give another story. But when I got into the leadership role, I actually tried really hard, and I read tons of literature. It was a 25-minute journey to work, so I often listened to podcasts. And my team gave me this feedback in a 360 feedback session that I wasn't in, so they got asked lots of questions. And one of the feedback moments was, we can tell when Mark's listening to a podcast that's really energized him, because he would almost take the hinges off the open plan list. And yeah, and it would, and I do remember doing it, be like, we're doing this today. I've listened to this new podcast about workforce engagement. Right. Everybody in my office, and they said to me, the energy's great, but at 7:30, 8 in the morning, when I didn't know what their day had been like, what their evening had been like, I didn't have an appreciation for what was going on operationally. That sometimes had been upsets and they had their own challenges. Yet I want to refocus them around a new objective that I'd listened to a podcast. So I even had to learn. I even found that about leadership. It wasn't, there was a time and a place to be visionary, and an understanding that I needed to pick and choose those moments about being visionary and coming in with this brand new idea that was going to reshape the whole team and their teams as well. Yeah, that was one of my, it was a great feedback moment from the team.
That's good that you're also so open to take those things on, because that sometimes may be difficult to hear, but it's good to then take that and actually improve on that and take that into your almost authentic self as well. That's going to make you a better leader, isn't it?
And I admitted to the team, the reason why I did that was I had imposter syndrome, massive imposter syndrome. I was trying to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was taking on all of this information about how to be the best leader, and then trying so hard to implement it so that everybody thought, well, I can see why he's our leader now. I can see why he was put into that role. And I was over exercising that in the team. So it was definitely an element of the imposter syndrome that once I realized I didn't really need to force that, it probably came better for the team.
That's good that you recognize it as well, and because then you can work on it, isn't it? That recognition of yourself and that self-awareness helps you just become better and do something about things. It's been really interesting. I thoroughly enjoy the ideas of the sports and the relationship to work, but also, just how to have that self-awareness as a leader to then do things better or improve things, and constantly having to work on it, though. It's not a thing that you're a leader and it stops and you don't improve on yourself at all. It's a continuous process. And that self-awareness is, I think, crucial as well to have that and develop yourself. So it's been really interesting. Thank you so much for actually coming onto the podcast. At the end, we always ask three more questions. So we really like to get your take on it. Some of it is probably already in some of your answers that you've provided us already today, but I'll kick off with the first one. What does extraordinary performance actually mean to you?
Yeah, I think extraordinary performance is when you have sustained high output. So it's month after month, if you like, year after year, not only just achieving your goals, but moving through goals, pushing the boundaries of achievement, doing the stuff in the background that means that winning's inevitable. And I sound super competitive when I say winning, but yeah, I think that's what extraordinary performance is. I'm more fascinated by what people are doing out of the spotlight to achieve what we all see. Yeah. So I think that's extraordinary performance for me.
I like that. The next question, how would you define a high performing team?
Good question. We talk about psychological safety, growth mindset. No issue is too big to overcome. I think that be where you get high performing team, that they are all willing to work for each other on the basics to achieve a common goal, a common stretch target, and they will willing to work together. So a high performing team, an individual will maybe sacrifice something for a colleague to achieve their goal, because ultimately that's better for the team as a whole.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Last question. What does good leadership look like to you?
Being able to articulate the vision. I think good leaders can storytell around a vision to really energize a team. It goes over and above compensation and reward. Yeah, it's centralizing a team and storytelling. I think I would say is where I would strive to be as a leader. But leadership's about setting the example and showing up and doing and acting in the way that you want the rest of the team to act. But you do that all of the time, whether somebody's looking or not.
That's very powerful,
Brilliant.
and I think that's something a lot of leaders should look at and probably need to think about a bit more. So thank you very much for that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Mark. It's been really a pleasure to speak to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.